In a world filled with information, where do you turn to get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Lock it in to the longest running financial talk show in Arkansas, and let us help you build the bridge between information and application. Real financial change begins right here, and it starts with you.
It's showtime! Woo!
On today's Get Ready for the Future show, the government is here and is here to help. No, really, they are. We're talking identity theft and how you can protect yourself from the nation's most common financial problem.
This is the Get Ready for the Future show.
And we welcome you into the Get Ready for the Future show. Scott Inman is away. I've said on the Fastest Forward that he is supporting the leisure economy this week, and so I'm sitting in for Scott, and we talked about the fact that you can only be adequate when you substitute for the Scott Inman.
The Scott Inman, that's right.
And Troy Johnson is here from our Bryant office to join us in the discussion today about identity theft and protecting your pockets. You know, guys, I think it's kind of interesting that we live in the South where, you know, protection is a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got a gun and, you know, protects their house, and some people have way more guns than they can possibly shoot at one time, you know, if they're...
We have more guns than people, for
yes,
sure.
Probably
yeah.
so. But how many people are vulnerable to this thing of identity theft? And it's one of those things that we hear about a lot, and you know, if you get caught up in it, it's a real problem. But do we really think about protecting ourselves in the same way we think about physically protecting ourselves?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people think about it until it happens to them. And guys, in many cases, at that point, it's really kind of too late. I mean, it can be fixed, but it requires a whole lot of time and effort to kind of recover everything after that point. So really, we want to talk about fraud and identity theft. They kind of go hand in hand, but there is a difference between the two, and both of those are things that you really need to understand.
Well, and we've got an expert coming in from the FBI. Now, Troy was kind of concerned about the FBI showing up today. Thankfully, they're going to be on Skype, and they won't really actually have access to Troy and maybe drag him off with them as they leave or anything like that.
Yeah, that's good news, because I was going to run whenever they got here. But on a for real note, you know, the coronavirus, like everything else, it really exacerbated identity theft, and we're going to look at some numbers on that here in a little bit. But I was kind of shocked when we were getting ready for this show.
Yeah, it is incredible how much that has ramped up. And by the way, Special Agent Peyton Tucker from the Little Rock office of the FBI is going to be joining us in our next couple of segments. So you want to definitely stay tuned for that. But Janet, let's dive in on what this threat really is. I think it's important that we understand that you and the people that give you advice are very highly vigilant on this issue of identity theft. We deal with it every day because we are constantly checking and protecting and making sure that the personally identifiable information that we have possession of for our clients is being well taken care of.
Well, let's talk about email. I mean, that's something so simple that we all use really every day. And so let's say we have a client who, a legitimate client, emails us and says, hey, I need you to send me $10,000 out of this account. Well, you know what? We're not going to do it. Not just based on that email. That's one of the ways that we protect against fraud in this case. So we will call that client and confirm, hey, I got an email, just wanted to make sure that this was from you legitimately, and then talk through everything. And they ultimately still get what they wanted, the money that they're requesting and need from their account. But that we've seen attempted fraud among our client base where somebody's email got hacked and the pretend person, they send an email to us and to the companies that we represent asking for money to be sent, and even falsified documents and all of that. Now, we caught it because we're in good contact with our clients, and that's just something that we're consistently focused on. But it is very real, and there are a lot of people who have been scammed in that type of situation really pretty easily.
And we're going to get more in depth into how we protect your email or your assets, your personal assets as we go into the show. But Troy, I want to kind of draw the conclusion here that, yes, there could be somebody overseas or some common criminal trying to access your personal information, but sometimes it's a lot closer to home.
Yeah, and this will be a good thing to speak with the FBI agent that's going to be on the show later. But, what we've seen is that sometimes it is somebody that's overseas across the ocean, but a lot of times it's actually a family member.
Yeah.
So it's another thing to look out for, and we never want to think about that, but you have to be aware of that too. There may be people in your family that know about your finances that may want to, extract some of that and get it for themselves as well.
Now, you may be wondering why we're making such a big deal out of this. Well, it is a big deal. Cases of identity theft in the United States doubled in 2020, mainly due to cyber criminals taking advantage of people that were affected by COVID-19 who filed for government benefits. Maybe they filed for unemployment. Maybe they didn't even file for unemployment, but all of a sudden you get in the mail this notice that unemployment benefits have been filed for in your name. I know that's happened to a lot of people that we know.
Yeah, we've absolutely seen that quite a bit in the last year or so. And, you talked about the numbers doubling, but depending on which category we're talking about, some of them were way more than a double. So like in 2020, as an example, there were 394,280 reports about government benefits fraud, compared with, in 2019, only 12,900. So going from, let's just call it 13,000 to over 390,000 claims that are government fraud claims. So when you think about, the number of people who were filing for unemployment benefits, and John, as you mentioned, people who weren't even filing, but there was something filed in their name using their identity. It was very common during coronavirus time period. And I think the other thing to consider is, even as we get past that reason for people doing this, if they did it once and they didn't get caught, guess what? When circumstances change and there's a different opportunity, different situation, they're going to try it again. And so your personal level of alertness only needs to increase.
Troy, this got so bad in the state of Arkansas that I think the Employment Security Division just absolutely had to stop taking phone calls because they were getting so many of them.
Yeah, so from what I've heard, there's a lot of cases out there where people have called in and they're really just telling them there's not much we can do about it right now. Now, hopefully they'll get caught up and they'll get on that, but it does seem like the criminals really figured this out and took advantage of COVID and just came out of the woodworks.
Well, and the other thing that really did ramp up during this time was not only unemployment benefits, but also people really trying to defraud the government with all of the various stimulus checks that were going on.
Yeah, and there was also the small business loans. We talked about the PPP program, all of that. So let's talk about small business loans. People reported 99,650 cases of fraud involving business or personal loans, compared with 43,000 in 2019. So a little over double on that.
Yeah, I think that one of the most egregious things that I saw in this regard was all of the Paycheck Protection Program fraud that was going on, because obviously there was a set amount of money that the government had to provide for that Paycheck Protection Program, and people were like making up companies that they supposedly were running, and they had all these hundreds of employees that they were trying to get this Paycheck Protection money for, and it just turned out to be false. It was not even an entity that they were working with. And so as the government kind of has time to work through that and deal with that, some of that stuff is actually, coming to fruition, and people are understanding the enormity of this fraud.
Yeah, and when we talk about identity theft, I think sometimes people wonder, okay, let's say my identity gets stolen. What do those people actually do with it? Well, there's several things that they can do. They can apply for credit. Mm-hmm. They can file taxes, actually. So when they do that, they try to receive your tax return, basically.
Yeah, and if you're getting even if you're not getting a refund, they dummy up a tax return to make it look like they're getting a refund, and then they try to intercept the refund check.
Right, and then the other thing that I thought was interesting, they can actually get medical services using your identity. So.
Wow. I did not know that. That's an interesting part of that you can actually access the coverage that you have on your health insurance.
Well, and so what happens in this situation is your credit score is at risk.
Yes.
And if you are still at a stage in life where you finance anything or you rent, whatever the case may be, then if your credit score matters for anything, then this is very important to you, because even if they don't take assets that belong to you, there's scripture that says a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. They may be getting great riches, whether they're yours or not. They may be getting those riches, but they're destroying your good name, and that good name matters for you financially.
Yeah, because they're likely not to pay the bill when it comes in on the credit card or what have you. And I think that is also interesting to note that if they are accessing your medical services that you have available through health insurance, they're also creating a fictitious history of medical causes that you don't have.
So like if you later go to apply for life insurance, then there's this medical issue in your history that really is not your issue.
Yeah, and so that can be very, very troublesome. And so the reason that we're focusing on this today is that this, crops up and is on fire for a while, like it was during the COVID period and the height of the pandemic. But then it dies down and people kind of get distracted and they kind of go along their merry way and they decide, it's not that big a deal until it fires back up again. We want you to be vigilant. We want you to really understand, number one, the threat that is out there to you, your money, your retirement. A lot of things could be involved in this. And then secondly, to know what action to take. And Troy, I think that as we get ready to hear from the FBI on this subject, there are a few key things that we could focus on to try to help people kind of get their minds right about this.
Yeah, the number one thing that I can think of is think about how many people are driving around listening to their show right now that have their Social Security card in their wallet.
Yes, and the socials and dates of birth of their children as
written
well.
down on a sticky note or something. Take that out. Find some other way, some password protected way to store that and get it out of your wallet, because that's the number one thing. I know I've lost 10 wallets in my life. If I'd had my card in there, that would have been a headache.
Well, and we see that all the time, because we'll ask, husband and wife come in, they're getting ready to retire. We start asking them about information for their beneficiaries, and we do need to have that. We have to have date of birth, and sometimes we have to have the social for the beneficiary as well. So it's legitimate for you to provide it in some situations, but I can't tell you how many times I have seen the man in particular pull out his wallet, pull out this old yellowed piece of paper that's been in there since the last child was born, and they have, the penciled in information. Well, John, you and I remember a time when our Social Security numbers were our driver's license number.
Yes.
And they were on our checks.
Yes.
They were everywhere for everybody to see. That was old school. People didn't do stuff like they do it now.
They changed that for a reason.
Yes, they did change it for a reason, and you need to take that piece of paper out of your wallet. It doesn't need to be there.
The other thing I would say, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in our fourth segment, but the other thing that I would say is that be patient with folks that are confirming your identity. If you call Gen Wealth, we're going to basically try to confirm your identity. If we don't know you, know your voice, and that type of thing, we're going to be sure that we are talking to the person that we think we're talking to. And so sometimes that's a little bit frustrating. If you're in a hurry and you want to just get something done, you can get a little bit miffed about the fact that somebody's asking you several questions. I know when we call to our broker dealer, LPL Financial, they go through several questions to make sure that we are who we say we are. So when we have access to personally identifiable information, I'll get it out in a minute, that we are the right person to have access to that information.
Yeah, so just be patient, and as we've talked about, don't give out your personal information except in the cases when it's needed. Obviously, if you're talking to somebody at the bank, if you're talking about your investments, talking with insurance people, those are some examples of cases where those people do actually need that personally identifiable information. Most other people don't really need it. Don't give it to them.
One other thing we'll mention, if you are a victim, report it immediately. Don't give in to the shame of this. There's no shame in it. You certainly need to report it in order to protect yourself. All right, we're going to be joining us in just a moment is going to be Special Agent Taylor from the FBI. We're going to talk a little bit more about identity theft coming up on the Get Ready for the Future show.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is that we have a unified purpose. Now, there's an internal aspect to that, and then there's an external aspect. All of us internally on the Gen Wealth team are working toward one purpose, but that purpose is to work with you, our clients, in whatever need you may have. John F. Kennedy said, efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. I believe that one of the reasons many people have trouble getting up and going to work on a Monday morning is that they don't have purpose and direction in what they're doing. But we do, every day, every week, and that's your purpose. Whatever it is that you want to do in retirement, we're here to help you meet that purpose, which means you and the Gen Wealth team all together have a unified purpose.
You ain't heard nothing yet. Buckle up, because we're back with the Get Ready for the Future show.
Guys, I think we'll all agree that if we are not the experts in the subject that we're dealing with, we reach out to folks that really do know about whatever that issue is. And so today on the Get Ready for the Future show, we are very, very happy to have joining us special agent from the FBI office in Little Rock, Peyton Tucker, and he's going to join us in our discussion about identity theft. And Peyton, we really thank you so much for joining us. It looks like you're joining us from the locker room of the FBI. Is that where you're at?
Yeah. Trying to find a quiet place in this outfit's pretty hard. So yeah, I'm back in our evidence response area where we've got. I'm in charge of this group as well, and so I'm able to capitalize on that by stealing the location away from everybody else so nobody interferes.
There you go. So let's kind of set the stage here a little bit. We've talked in our mindset about identity theft and what we have to deal with here at Gen Wealth, but let's just broaden it out to the public in general. Who needs to be concerned about identity theft?
Everybody does. We used to, when I first started almost 15 years ago, we talked a lot about identity theft in terms of the elderly, which it's still a problem. Elder fraud is still rampant, and we are still looking into that. But it's really broadened out. I think with the availability of online through apps, I mean, everything you do financially is you're doing it digitally, basically. Now, we used to talk about, I remember giving presentations when I first started about making sure you check your mail, your mailbox frequently, right, for checks. When you get the checks mailed to you or when you got anything, it's making sure your trash is getting taken care of, you're shredding, whereas now that doesn't happen anymore. And so what that is that opens up a whole new group that is could be taken advantage of, and that's people that are using things. So it's not just the elderly anymore. Everybody from 16-year-olds up through 80-year-olds are somebody that are at risk for identity theft.
Peyton, you talked about who's at risk. Let's talk a little bit about who's doing this. Who's on the bad side of the equation here? Because stereotypically, back in the early days, at least from our exposure to this, it was an email from a Nigerian prince, that type of thing. But it's much more widespread now. So, including even family members. So let's talk about who can be on the list of the bad guys.
Yeah, I think you said it right there. Don't get me wrong. The Nigerian princes are still out there, so that is still something. Not Nigerian. We also there's a lot more of just, we call them romance scams, where it's somebody finding someone online, that is at home, especially during this COVID time. They're reaching out, and all of a sudden somebody's interested in them, and they've been by themselves. That's it. But it's everywhere now. It is people here in the United States, because used to we thought this is somebody over in Eastern Europe who is running through and they've just got a bunch of names. But now it's here. It's anybody from somebody you live around to family, regrettably. Sometimes it's family, to its places of employment when people are trying to hire people or you're working from home. It's everywhere. And so it's something that you've got to be aware of. It may not be somebody that far away. It may be somebody close to you physically.
Peyton, what methods do these people use to commit this fraud?
I guess the first, I just kind of talked about it. It's that Nigerian prince scheme, which you call it a romance scam, you call it a confidence scam. There's tons of names for it, but it's, hey, I need you to open a bank account for me, or I need to open a bank account in your name so that I can get some money. Can you provide me that information? That's one way of doing it. Another way is people are still computer hacking is still prevalent. That's happening all the time. We are a lot more alert to it, and businesses are ready to fight back quickly. Used to, you didn't see it as quickly, but more companies are employing these professionals who are experts in IT security, which is helpful to us because they are watching it and able to shut it down. But a lot of these hacks that happen, sometimes people will obtain personal information and hold on to it for months or a year, and then you're not quite sure where it's coming from. But also it's stuff that's written down, paperwork that didn't get taken care of quickly from a doctor's office, a bank, things that PII that didn't get destroyed as it should be. And so any method, and then sometimes it is just friends who are calling around saying, hey, I need your name, social security number, and people are just giving it. And we've arrested people, and you will see notebooks just full of names, social security numbers, and it wasn't under threat of duress. It was just like, I need this. And it's like, okay, here you go, which
wow.
You ask these people why, and they just said, well, they asked for it. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. But then again, we're dealing with criminals, so it's not like we're dealing with professionals who work in the financial industry.
So you're talking very specific cases where there are people that go in and access this information. But what the public sees oftentimes is not those cases, because those cases kind of get handled fairly quietly. But the public sees these cases that are where there's a big data breach, like with Target or Equifax or
your bank.
Your bank or whatever the case may be. Tell us a little bit about those big cases. And you mentioned earlier about, people holding on to information. That's the thing that kind of concerns me about those big cases, is they have so much data that it may be years before this actually surfaces.
That's exactly right. It's next to impossible. To track it down, like, oh, this was the single event. I'm sure, like many of you, I've gotten the alert from my credit card company that says my credit card was used somewhere else. Well, I'm trying to remember. I've used it. My wife has used. It's gone. With those cases like that, we're usually focused initially on who's doing that hacking. They're the ones that are initially. And so that's what our cyber team will focus on, that part of it. And what we'll try to do is get out to the people who have been their personal information, which I'm sure lots of people have gotten those contacts, whether by email or some way, saying your personal information was taken. But we're trying to track down and let those people know, and start being aware and start tracking that. And that's what it is. It's trying to tell everybody, you've got to be more vigilant to what's going on, whether it's that credit report every year, it's locking down things when you're traveling, it's using the appropriate methods to handle your own finances.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. You mentioned, that the FBI would try to reach out to these people and let them know what's going on. What does that feel like on the, let me say, the consumer's end? Because frankly, that would be something that I would be like, Mom, seriously, the FBI is not going to call you. So how do they know it's you?
It's a hard thing to do. I am dealing with that every day. I talk to somebody. What I do a lot of times, what we do, if there is any indication of, like, you're not sure, I always tell people, like, I'm calling you. Here's what you can do. You can call our office, and I'm not going to tell you the phone number. You look it up on your own, call, and you ask for Special Agent Peyton Tucker, and you're going to get back to me. Now, you're not going to be able to call and say, does Peyton Tucker work there? They won't do that. But that's how we do it. It's kind of let people get out. A lot of times we end up trying to do it in person, if we can. But usually we also have, with these larger cases, you get contacted by us, but also the Department of Justice. If you're a victim, you will be a part of, and you'll see there is a number, or there's a website that you can go to, and it's locked down. It's very secure for you to kind of be notified of if you had a financial loss or if you're included in that group.
Hey, Peyton, on those larger cases, the more national news type cases, when y'all finally track down who it is that's responsible, what's the punishment that people like that are looking at?
It really depends. There's so many factors that go into it. Some of those bigger ones, we've had several recently where I've seen, they weren't worked out of our office here, but nationally with the FBI overseas, and it's making sure to work with our foreign partners who are helpful to us and getting those people brought back over here. But they have been a lot more vigilant, and the courts have been better about this, because used to it would be, somebody robs a bank and they'll get 10 years, but somebody steals $1 million, which is way more than they got robbing the bank. They didn't get as much. Now, that person hacking or stealing the money, there was no gun, it wasn't face to face, and so there's a little bit of a variation there. But they've started coming better with the punishment because of the effect it has on the economy as a whole. So we're trying to encourage people to do this, going to digital, going to stuff, especially now in COVID, when you have to. That's the only way. Your banks aren't open for you to go conduct transactions like you used to.
The topic today is identity theft and how it affects you and how you can protect yourself. Here on the Get Ready for the Future show, joining us is Special Agent from the Little Rock office of the FBI, Peyton Tucker. Peyton, I wanted to ask you mentioned this just in brief, just a brief moment in your comments about this, but we're in vacation season right now. I think this week is actually the most vacationed week of all weeks of the summer, but I'm going on vacation over in July, and it really did hit me, as you mentioned, that when you are traveling, when you're on vacation, you're really very vulnerable, because you tend to kind of let your guard down to some degree because it's time to relax, right?
Right. Oh yeah, that's definitely the time people start. You get out of your your normal everyday, and so you're a little bit looser, right? You're not setting your wallet down in the same place at your house that you're used to setting it down. You're not going to the same gas stations that you know and trust. You're going to new ones. So yeah, it is that happens a lot too, because you add that in, and then 6 months from now you're on you've been back from vacation. You think it's something that happened recently, which is not true. It's not always true. It could be that it happened back when you were gone. So it's a matter of keeping aware during those times as well. So
for those folks that are traveling, what are some tips that you could potentially give them?
So you've got that. I mean, people are very hesitant, I know, to deal in cash. You don't want to carry around large amounts of cash. That's always helpful. You're not using credit card transactions, but making sure to use those credit cards that are guaranteed. I know that there's ones out there you're able to check. They have a little bit more of a security and are the certain credit cards that will help you. And you guys will know this better than I will, but the ones that will say, hey, you're guaranteed against fraud for a certain amount. But it's checking that. I mean, everybody should have that on their app and be able to look out, hey, this transaction. I mean, when I'm on vacation, I know my credit card's getting run a lot more. I am keeping up with it. I want to see what all transactions, all of a sudden 3 transactions at whatever restaurant, I know that's not true. And I'm going to call right away and let them know, hey, you swiped it twice. I only had one meal, and I know on vacation I'm eating way more than I should be, but I didn't have 2 meals. I just had one still. So.
Well, gotcha. All right. We're going to continue our conversation with Special Agent Peyton Tucker from the FBI Little Rock office as we delve into the issue of identity theft here on the Get Ready for the Future show. We're back in just a moment.
The beauty of a potter's work is that each item is unique. No piece is the same. That's what makes it art. At Gen Wealth, we believe your financial plan should be unique to you. Through our process, your money is carefully shaped around your goals and dreams. Your future, artfully crafted. Call us today or visit our website and connect with us. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is we believe in balance, and it's really a twofold standard. For our team, we believe that you've got to work and you've got to do things the right way, but you also have to have some time off, and you can't do your job if your job is all you do. For our clients, we believe in balance because their investment portfolios need to take as much risk as they need to achieve their goals, but not so much risk that they lose everything that they've got. Balance is incredibly important in both our team and for our clients.
Did you know there are a ton of financial resources on GetReadyForTheFuture.com? No? Well, bookmark that page for later because the Get Ready for the Future show is back.
We are talking about identity theft and a lot of the things that you kind of worry about a little bit, from time to time. It all of a sudden gets heightened back up when we have a situation like COVID come into play, and there's a lot of identity theft going on. And we're joined by Peyton Tucker from the FBI office in Little Rock. And Janet, you had a question that you wanted to ask Agent Tucker.
So, Peyton, before you joined us today, we were talking about how much more common fraud had been in terms of government benefits during the whole coronavirus time period. That was something that we saw a great deal of increase in. What's happening right now, and maybe even something regionally, where if you're talking to, this part of the country, they need to be aware that if this happens, it's probably a scam. So what's something that might be going on and is a hot topic right now for you guys?
I definitely just kind of echo what you said about the loans that are going out right now for your PPP, your Paycheck Protection Program, your PUA, your Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the unemployment. That's the big one. I know that was just rampant. For your friends, your families, even yourself, people that are working at jobs, and getting contacted by your employer saying you filed for unemployment, and that's like, no, I didn't. I didn't file, and that's the big ones we're really dealing with. I, in my mind, this goes back to the old mortgage fraud days. When I first started working, boy, mortgage fraud was just rampant because, right, you used to not the no doc loans, the no stated income loans, things like that. We're back at it again. It's just a different type. And whenever it's understandable, we're trying to stimulate the economy, and we're not trying to stop that. We want people to get there and spend, but sometimes it's a lot of money coming quickly. You've got to be aware of what's going on. But I would think specifically for our area, the PUA, which is the unemployment, that's something that's really hitting hard when you've got just people already dealing with not able to hire employees, and then they're getting sent letters saying your employees are filing for unemployment, which they may or may not have. And so it's just adding a lot of hassle to your business owners.
So, Peyton, as the economy continues to open back up and hopefully unemployment continues to go down, do y'all see that type of fraud slowing down some?
Yeah, in fact, I thought the other day where they had kind of spent all of the, I want to say PPP money, and I can't remember which one, but one of those is coming out. I mean, that helps, right, in a sense, because they've stopped that allocation of that money, and so some of that will slow down. And I know we here in Arkansas, I believe I saw the other day the governor is not taking any more, that type of the extra $300, things like that. That will slow down a little bit, but the PPP, which that's going to continue because we're still finding out about it, so that will continue to go on for a while. But that identity theft, I think that's through all of this, that's going to stay around for a while. I think as people were doing more things online than ever before, more people were being pushed, right, to work online or to handle their finances online. Even those people who were used to going to banks that couldn't for a large amount of time.
Peyton, obviously you are dedicated to trying to stamp out this, but how much of the FBI's resources are sucked up by things like identity theft and other white-collar crime? We often think about FBI fighting terrorism and things of that nature, the big dramatic things that we see across the country, but you guys really are very busy in this white-collar crime area.
Oh, it is one of our top 10 priorities. I mean, counterterrorism, counterintelligence, that is definitely still at the forefront, but financial crimes has been around because, finances are involved in everything from, a lot of these terrorists now are doing it for money. You're hiring people. You've got when we're working counter espionage cases, they're trying to pass money off, money's going through. And a lot of them, they're financing it through financial crimes. So a lot of times our group ends up partnering with every other squad here in Little Rock. And this happens also because of the experience we see working through these financial type of crimes. We see it in a little bit different way. We may not know the ideology behind some of these people, but we've seen the method. That's nothing new about how they do things. And so it keeps us busy, call it consulting, but working with these other squads of ours to help them with that.
Let me circle back to maybe more of an individual focus rather than all the different organizations. So my mom is 80 years old and is very sharp for her age, amazingly so. And she got a call recently from a clearinghouse, not Publishers Clearinghouse, but a clearinghouse. And, it sounded like Ed McMahon was going to come to her door on Friday morning. Well, very early in the call, she told them, my daughter's a financial advisor. I'll have her here, and the conversation changed pretty quickly. But really, she has been very good about recognizing red flags and staying in touch with me. When she gets a phone call, she will contact me immediately when she hangs up the phone. But for people who maybe don't think like she does and aren't as adept at that type of conversation, what are some of the things that they just need to know and be aware of, especially at that stage of life?
I think it's the constant reminder of, if somebody's asking for any of your personal information over the phone, it's not legit. Nobody's going to do that. No good business does this. No bank does this. It's also setting that plan up ahead of time. It's real hard. I have parents, I have in-laws that are both very sharp, but that same thing, it's tell them, hey, let's start discussing this now, but I've gotten to a point sometimes we've had people that we've had to go, I just tell them, don't answer the phone. If it's not somebody let them leave a message, let it do it, not talking to them. It's having somebody else, monitoring is a strong word, but having access in some way, whether it's a daughter or a friend, somebody that kind of knows things. Regrettably, we see more. It's not necessarily the online, but somebody coming up and saying, hey, your roof needs fixing, to an elderly grandparent. It says, yeah, it's going to cost you $50,000. And everybody, no, that's not, but they're like, I guess it's $50,000. I don't know. I'm not in roofing. And so that's where you start checking. For the rest of us, I'm like, wait a minute, that's a lot of money. Or let me call my buddy who had his roof done and he tells me, no, it wasn't that. I think that's it. It's kind of sharing that information, working together, friends, family, somebody like that, not being, because we're I don't know. I feel like we all grew up where you don't share that finances. You don't talk about it. We've got to be a little bit more having somebody. Sometimes it's good to have somebody that's just can tell you that is ridiculous. Don't be doing that type conversation.
Peyton, I'm wondering, I know there's no panacea to try to protect someone from this, but what about these services that are marketed across the country that, LifeLock would be one of them, and there are various others out there, and I know you're not in the business of endorsing one, but how effective are those types of services at fending off this identity theft wave that we see going on?
I think they're good in just keeping you aware, right? Like if you're not checking your free credit report that you can get every year, if you're not looking it up, I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't looking at your bank account or your credit card statements or anything else constantly, and knowing that's kind of a push for you to start doing that and having somebody kind of looking to, if you don't have a financial advisor that's looking through some of your statements to kind of know what's going on, what usual thing, it's nice to have that. It is not going to be something, not any one of them is not going to cure it and prevent it. There's nothing that can happen that way, but keeping aware, because if you're not checking your credit score, then all of a sudden you go to buy a house. I mean, there's lots of people refinancing this last few years, and that may be the first time they've looked at their credit score in a long time, and kind of wondering, well, what does that mean? Where does that go? That's what's key, I think, is just being a little bit more attuned to it. You don't do it every day, don't do it every hour, but keeping up with that, knowing where your finances are generally is going to help you understand to make that next call.
Hey, Peyton, if someone thinks that they've been a victim of identity theft, is the FBI, their local FBI office, is that the first call they need to make, or what steps do they need to go through?
So there's several things you want to call, make a police report right away. You call your local police wherever you're at. You can go to IC3, which is Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, and that's an FBI, and that's where it goes in, because a lot of times when these get put in, if we start pooling those, we'll may be able to figure out pretty quickly on, all right, we have a group that got defrauded, and there's some type of commonality between them. And we may know, like, all right, there's people from all over, but we realized they were all at Disney World, in June of 2021, and we're kind of able to work with our Florida offices, whatever that may be. And so that's things that help. And then immediately you got to start calling your credit cards, your banks, everybody, putting everything on lockdown, changing all that stuff. In fact, that may even be first, because they're going to be able to track you a little bit better, but notifying. Now, are we going to be able to call each and every one of those people? We can't do it, and it may just be, but especially if, hey, you didn't lose any money, you saw something, but you're able to get your money back, that's great. We want to know about it because, like I said, connecting with others, but we may not be opening a case directly on, your one kind of identity theft or intrusion.
So we've got a little bit more than a minute left, Peyton. I want to talk a little bit about the, obviously the reticence of someone to report. They don't want to necessarily report this because either A, they don't think it's a big deal, or number two, and the biggest thing, I guess, is probably they feel somewhat ashamed that they've been taken advantage of. That really has to go by the wayside when you're dealing with something like this, I believe.
Yeah, I've had multiple conversations, especially with your elderly parents, grandparents who are just ashamed of it, and they don't want their friends to know. I mean, we don't share about it, but this happens all the time. They are not the first, nor will they be the last, and I think that's making sure, and we're private. We're not letting people know. I mean, that's more than likely it's not getting out there. You're telling me, I'm not telling anybody else, and we're going to keep it that way. But it's better you got to think of more of your next friend that's coming through, not just you.
So just in summary, I think it's important to recap, having some trusted person in your life that you can bounce things off of, make sure, like Janet was talking about with her mom and that type of thing, that's a big deal. Being sure that you are vigilant about your who you're giving your information to, that's a big deal. And then certainly not turning away the opportunity to report that just because you feel like you've been a victim.
That's correct. You got it.
All right, great. That's going to do it for our conversation with Peyton. Peyton, I really do appreciate you joining us on the Get Ready for the Future show and going through the Inquisition today about all of this with things that you deal with every day. So thanks so much for being with us, and hopefully we won't have to cross paths again with an identity theft issue, but it's good to know we know somebody in high places.
Happy to do it. Feel free to call anytime.
All right. Thanks so much. The Get Ready for the Future show continues in just a moment. Hey, it's John and Janet from Gen Wealth Financial Advisors, and we are so excited and honored to be named Arkansas Money and Politics Best of the Best in 2020 in two categories. One as Best Financial Advisors, but secondly, Best Women-Owned Business.
Thank you so much for your vote of confidence in us. We know it's the Gen Wealth Financial Advisors name that showed up, but we also know that we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much for your support and for your vote of appreciation for Gen Wealth.
There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at Gen Wealth and harness the power of more.
Smarter, simpler, more personal approach to retirement continues with the Get Ready for the Future show.
If you're wondering where you stand as far as retirement is concerned, you can get a quick checkup for your retirement readiness at 15minuteretirement.com. This is something that we have worked with here at Gen Wealth to provide you with that snapshot of where you are. A lot of people are working their way toward retirement, but they'd like to just kind of figure out, okay, where am I at on this journey? With 15 minutes with one of our advisors, you can very easily do that. So go to 15minuteretirement.com and fill out the information there. We're not asking you for any of your personal information that's going to, be subject to the things that we've been talking about on the show today, but we'll get you in touch with a financial advisor here at Gen Wealth, and they'll walk you through the process of 15-minute retirement. Again, that is 15minuteretirement.com. Janet, as we wrap up the show today in our final segment, I think it's important that we talk a lot about where we come down on this whole issue of identity theft and what we're doing to protect our clients here at Gen Wealth.
Yeah, so we kind of alluded to this earlier in the show if you were with us, giving some examples about like when we've had people who have pretended to be a client of ours and have asked for income via email and even falsified documents. We've been able to catch that. We've not ever had an issue that actually, went all the way through where somebody got money that they should not have gotten. But I think one of the key things that I would say to you is that the relationship with your advisor is important. We know things like, the longer we work with you, we know things like what's your preferred method of communication. Like there are some people who are never, ever, ever going to email me. They will call every single time. So if I ever get an email from that person asking for money, I already know this is
not it.
Yeah, this is not how they operate. And for us to help you understand that when we do get an email, we're going to call you. We're going to validate that request and make sure that it's legitimate. So that relationship with your advisor, it's only going to grow over the years in working with a Gen Wealth advisor. But I believe that is critical, just like we talked about with Special Agent Tucker a few moments ago, the relationship with a family member for you to be able to talk through things. We get to know you, frankly, sometimes better than your kids do as far as your finances are concerned, for sure. And we know what to expect and what not to expect. And that just really makes a big difference in protecting you.
Well, and even when we get close with clients, like let's say we've got a client named Joe and we've gotten close with him, formed a good relationship. Well, let's say he moves and he may send us an email and say, hey, Troy, I moved. This is my new address. Well, we're still going to call him and say, hey, Joe, I know you know that we're looking out for your best interest, but before we update this, let's just make sure this is your new address. So
right.
That's the key, is always reaching out and just confirming anything, especially when it's dealing with personally identifiable information.
Early on when we formed Gen Wealth Financial Advisors, we wanted to have a relationship with a very large, very reputable organization that was basically our support system, our back office, our vendor, if you will, for account maintenance and things of that nature. And we formed that relationship with LPL Financial. LPL Financial is the largest independent broker-dealer in the country, and that's all ranked by one of the financial planning magazines. They have this annual deal, right, and LPL's preeminently always at the top of that list. But we did that, Janet, for a lot of reasons, but this is one of them, is that they have a lot of protocol, they have a lot of processes in place that protect people from identity theft and fraud on their accounts.
They do, as do some of the other firms that we work with, as far as, I say other firms, but product representatives. Those product companies do as well. There are a lot of things that can be put in place. Some of them are standard, but like in the example that I was talking about earlier where somebody tried to send in an email, the product companies actually put something in place that on those particular accounts that they always required a phone call, they always required voice identification through that phone call from that point forward. And so once there was any kind of a red flag, then there were more safety measures put into place. And LPL does a lot of things comparable to that.
Troy, one of the things that, people this was prior to your time joining Gen Wealth, but right after the financial crisis and the whole episode of Bernie Madoff, we had a lot of people come in going, how do I know you're not the next Bernie Madoff? Mm-hmm. And the answer always was, look, I'll never ask you to write a check to John Shrewsbury or Troy Johnson, it always is written to either LPL Financial or one of our product vendors.
Right. When you're making your IRA contributions, or if you have money that you're going to invest, or if you're rolling money over from a 401k, that check is never going to be made out to an individual, never somebody's name. That check is going to be made out to LPL Financial or, John, like you said, a product vendor if it's going straight there.
And there are a list of product vendors on the LPL website, so you're never without that information of being able to verify, okay, is this going to the right place?
And you're already going to know because we will have talked about the prospectus for that investment. You'll know what company that is, so that should not come by any surprise to you. The other way, and this is different, this is for a financial planning fee. Now, financial planning fee checks would be, in our case, be made payable to GenWealth, but again, not to the advisor. They're never going to be made payable to the advisor, but the fee for financial planning is to pay for the time and the work in putting together the plan for you. It is not your investment, okay? So your investment is not ever going to be a check made payable to GenWealth even.
You always also have to think about signing your own documents. Now, there are electronic signatures, and all of that is very secure and that type of thing. So we might email you a document from, and it would come from someone here at GenWealth, but it is an electronic secure signature. But also, you don't want someone signing for you. There is no legitimacy to what's called a convenient signature. You can't just say to your financial advisor, oh, sign that form for me. It'll be okay. That does not work. So you've got to be sure that happens. And you always have to do that. But also, Troy, I think it's important that you review your statements each time that they come in, because clearly, you get a lot of mail and you get a lot of mail, frankly, from us.
Right.
But you need to be sure that you're looking over those statements to make sure they're accurate.
Yeah, LPL is going to send you a monthly statement. And then beyond that, LPL also has Account View, which is your online portal, where if you want to get in there and look at it every single day, you can. But that's another, just a transparency thing. If you've got money invested somewhere, you need to be able to look at it when you want to look at it.
Well, and that's something Special Agent Tucker referenced, not necessarily on investment accounts, but talking about things like your credit cards and your bank accounts, to look at those regularly. And he used the example of, like, I know I didn't eat at that restaurant three different meals at lunch. It was just one, and swipe the card once. The same type of thing is something that you just need to be looking at your accounts. It is so easy now to look at accounts online. If we're talking about investment accounts and credit cards, I've got an app on my phone for hours, and we pay them off. We don't keep a balance or anything, but I look at, like, when we were traveling to Boston recently, we did all of those purchases on a credit card, just like Agent Tucker was saying. So we're not carrying a lot of cash, but I was looking at it regularly, and my husband uses a card on the same account, and I will, once or twice a week go, honey, what is this one? And just verify that it's a legitimate charge. And the same thing on your investment accounts. If you're looking at income coming out of it, you've got to pay attention to, well, hey, we were only getting $3,000 and there was $5,000 that came out of this. What is that? And if it's going to taxes, okay, you forgot we were withholding taxes for you. That's fine. Everything's good. But if it went somewhere else, then we need to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to circle back to where you started with this conversation, Janet, and that is the relationship with your advisor.
Yeah.
And I want to expand that out a little bit to talk just for a minute about what we do here at GenWealth. Obviously, the relationship with your advisor does protect you in this particular type of situation, but on a broader sense, the relationship with an advisor and having a plan really does protect you against bad things happening in a lot of different cases, especially as you plan for retirement.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And we deal with having a plan in a lot of different areas. Just as an example, we haven't really talked about power of attorney today. That's not something that we do, but we'll help you connect with people who do, and that is somebody who can sign on your behalf if it needs to happen. So being intentional about planning and thinking about all of the what ifs, what if my account gets, compromised in some way, bank account, whatever, what are you going to do? You need to have a plan to relate to whatever those situations are, and we focus a great deal on retirement income planning, but that encompasses all of these other areas, guys.
All right, you've heard the bell. It's time for our final thoughts as we wrap up this show on identity theft, and we'll start with Janet.
I would just say to be alert and also to be in touch with somebody whom you trust tremendously. In my mom's case, anytime she gets a phone call that doesn't sound quite right, she's going to call me or text me immediately and go, "Hey, honey, here's what's going on. What do you think?" And she's very aware of what's going on. That's a really good thing, but be sure it's somebody whom you can completely trust.
If it's not a family member, it has to be a trusted friend. Troy?
Yeah, having a plan is a big deal. Your plan is not going to keep bad things from happening altogether, but having that plan, it can help you be prepared if something does happen to go wrong.
I think my final thought is, do not be swayed by this feeling that you've been taken advantage of and you're ashamed of the situation. There is nothing to be ashamed of if you have been a victim of identity theft. Look, people all over the country endure this kind of situation all the time. The shame is if you are taken advantage of and nothing happens and you don't get help. You don't get a way to recover your money. You don't get a way to report that person and have them put in jail for what they've done. That's the shame that could come from identity theft. So please make that report to your local police department. And if it is something that needs to be elevated up to the federal level with the FBI, the local police will assist you in actually doing that. But be sure to not let this go by and you be a double victim of identity theft and have to endure that situation as time goes on. Guys, it's great to be with you today. Scott will be back next week if he doesn't decide to stay on the beach in Florida or something like that. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But we thank you for joining us on the Get Ready for the Future show. Hopefully you've seen something today that will help you out. And if you need some help with us, give us a call. We're here to help you at the Get Ready for the Future show.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.